Now, I guarantee you've heard at least one, if not four, of these case acceptance myths in your lifetime. So after watching this video, I want you to keep these myths in mind. And I want you to try some of the solutions that I'm going to be giving you. And I promise you, you're going to be well on your way to getting perfect case acceptance. All right, good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Dr. Scott. Today we're going to be discussing many of the myths and fallacies that float around the chiropractic seminar circuit. Things that are related to case acceptance, case presentation. Looking forward to going over those with you because this is a big part of you clearing out some of the stuff you've been taught over your lifetime to get that perfect case acceptance that we're looking for. All right, so first, before that, question of the day, fill in the blank. My favorite thing about my life right now is, what's your answer? So obviously there's a lot going on, right? And I know people are starting to kind of get back moving, or at least thinking about getting back moving. But I want to know what you're thankful for right now. It's Win Wednesday, so in our High Performance Chiro group, which if you're not in it, please go join it, although I don't think I have a link on today's show. So we're going to be talking over on the High Performance Chiro group. We always share our wins today on Wednesday. So things we're thankful for, things that went well this week. Again, I know a lot of states are opening back up. I know Iowa is partially. Our county actually is staying closed for another 2 weeks. But what are you thankful for? What are you grateful for? What's great in your life right now? For me, it's definitely the kid time. I've just been absolutely loving this apocalypse. And I know, there's a lot of shutdown, a lot of things to hate about it over there. But I'm enjoying the time here, especially with the kids. It's a time where we've definitely bonded as a family. The Pictionary games at night are outstanding. So those are some great things in my life right now. Share those in the comments down below with me if you'd be so kind. And then let's get into these myths that we're talking about. So the first myth that I want to share with you, that again I know has been heard by some other coaches and consultants out there. I won't name names. And actually they're all, I don't know how to say all, but I don't ever pick on other coaches and consultants. Like they have their thing and they do it, and I just see, I don't know if I want to get into this, but I see all the failures, right? I get called in when other stuff doesn't work. So I start to hear these things and able to figure them out over the years of working with over 700 chiropractors in office, like face-to-face. So where a lot of other coaches and consultants would give you a script that worked for them, I tend to work out scripts for individuals, but also find some general similarities amongst the myths. I'll end it there. So the first myth that I've seen is the magic word theory. So this is based on the idea that doctors and big practices have these clever lines that are going to stop patients dead in their tracks and make them permanently change their health and their financial priorities forever. Simply not true. It's not true because, as I said last week, patients progress one step at a time towards higher health awareness. And our job is to move them one step at a time. Now, you may see some of these practices that practice the magic word theory. You may think it's working because they have big practices. And I can tell you, I'm impressed by that because it's actually harder work because there are no referrals. So they build big practices with the magic word theory, but their patients feel sold and they don't refer, and there's no sustainability. They've got to keep hustling in order to hold that level. And again, if they're doing that, my hat's off to them because it is very hard to maintain that level without referrals coming in. The giant steps that patients take in their own health maturity are almost always inspired by their own painful personal experiences. Something they have to learn outside your office in order for them to make that big step. So when you're present with them and you give them options and they choose a bad one and they go out again to the pain basement and they learn more and then they come back to you, that's when they learn those big steps. But if you push them away with those magic words, you never get that case from them. Now, there are some things that you can say to inspire a patient, to move your patient a step or two down the path, but there's nothing you can say all by itself that's going to transform them. So that's myth number one. The second myth I want to talk about today is the myth that if you love them enough, you'll push them. And I've heard this one a lot over the years, that if you love people, you're going to push them until they comply with your recommendations. It's the right thing to do, to almost force them to do what's right. This approach is not tolerated at all by patients, at least not anymore. As patients pay more and more out of pocket for healthcare, They demand more efficiency, they demand more value, and they're much less tolerant to being pushed. It leads to what I call the dead practice syndrome, which occurs when you take this unpopular stand with your patients and you fail to sense your mistake until it's way, 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 way too late. When this happens, doctors have to basically restart their practices from scratch, and I've seen it happen many times. They go to a seminar, they learn how to push, they come back to their practice, and they push everybody to accept these recommendations, and people just start falling off one by one. And sooner or later, they look around and they don't have any of their faithful patrons anymore. And they really just have to start over, get a whole new group of people in there, and try to convince them into more care. And unfortunately, it leads to more and more selling. It's better in the long run to just tell the patient what they need. Then ask that patient how they feel about it. Lead that patient to feel more supported in their decision, which leads to you keeping your practice and promoting the practice that you actually want, which is easygoing, good relationship-based, and much more fun to be around. All right. Third myth for perfect case acceptance is to bundle your recommendations into an all-inclusive fee and accept nothing less. Ooh, good coffee this morning. Most patients do care about the cost, and they want to know how you stumbled upon the number that you presented them with. A lot of doctors and coaches out there have shown you how to put this package together and without detailing everything. Patients are going to want you to tell them exactly what treatment they need, why they need it, how much it costs, broken down, as well as a bundle care. And I'm not saying don't offer a full price, but it needs to be broken down for them. Bundling can qualify as step skipping, in my opinion. People need to be brought along at their own pace, step by step. The example I always give when I talk about this one is that back at one of my earlier offices, we had a storm that knocked a few shingles off of our roof. So I called the roof company. Took forever. Finally, a guy shows up to evaluate the damage and give me an estimate. And again, for me, it was just a few shingles that needed to be replaced. But he told me that we needed a whole new roof. And we needed a whole new roof because the roof was originally designed improperly, whatever that means. And that the cost was going to be $12,000. Certainly not what I expected when I had a few shingles that came off my roof. So when I told him I just wanted to do the $400, he was obviously annoyed that, he was so excited about this $12,000 redo job that the $400 shingle repair was beneath him. And I obviously told him, I'll think about it. Got rid of him, called another roofing company. They came and fixed it for $400. And I was much, much happier. Now, the reason I use that as an example, because if that guy had simply mentioned that maybe I might need a new roofing repair or might need a whole new roof and it was going to be $12,000, but this one was $400 and he could do that by Friday, he would have became my roofer. I would have paid him the $400. He would have gotten the job. And later, when that design, if water started coming through my roof, who would I have called? I would have called him for the roofing job, right? He would have been my roofer. And that's what I'm telling you. Instead of bundling and taking an all or nothing presentation, meet the patient where they're at, you become their chiropractor, and you will get that big job, that perfect case acceptance later. All right. Never know what numbers to push. There we go. Myths 4 through 6. So the fourth myth is that relationship conquers all. So I've heard coaches out there telling you that developing a good relationship with your patients, being completely friends with them, leaves them helpless before you when you suggest a comprehensive approach. They talk about using a patient's name a certain number of times, from the old how to win friends and influence people concept. Keeping notes that talk about the patient's family life and their hobbies, that's going to just cure everything. No, that's not going to hurt your case acceptance at all. But don't be fooled into thinking that this is a magic bullet, because it's not. Studies have shown that patients will leave their long-standing primary care physicians just to save $5 per visit. Did you catch that? $5 per visit. So these are people that they've loved for years and stayed with. And for $5 a visit, they would choose somebody else if their insurance company changed. So now there are scientific steps that can be taken in this area to build a better relationship while you're also building perfect case acceptance. There's automatic behavior that we've talked about before. It's something that's triggered. A person responds in a predictable way without really processing the information that's been given to them. If they are used with some of these triggers, the six weapons of influence we've talked about before. We talk about them in referral mastery as well. Just to go over those 6 weapons real quick, and this is from Robert Cialdini's book, The Art of Influence. influence the art of persuasion, excuse me. So the 6 weapons are reciprocation, authority, liking, social proof, commitment and consistency, and scarcity. So we can use those as weapons of influence to build that relationship. And again, people will have automatic behaviors because of them. But simply remembering their name, writing that stuff down is not enough to create perfect case acceptance. The 5th myth that we talk about is to be prepared to overcome objections. Now, you can't really overcome objections in healthcare, but that doesn't mean you can't accomplish the same thing. It just needs to be done before you get to the case presentation phase. So many of the myths are that you present, you have an objection, you then overcome it. You present again, you have an objection, you overcome that one. And I'm saying you've got to back up before you ever give the case presentation, figure out what the objections are going to become, and overcome them before they're ever objections. If you start making a list of all the ways patients slip out of the office without making a decision or making the wrong decision in your opinion, keep track of what happens the most. Fix those things in your diagnostic phase, because that's really where it happens. If you feel like patients are routinely outsmarting you in your case presentations, or if they don't seem mature enough to take responsibility for their own health, the problem is not them, it's you. And the problem isn't case presentation, it's the diagnostics phase, it's what leads up to it. If you're having objections at the case presentation phase, that's not the problem isn't at the case presentation phase, it's before that. During the examination, you failed to let the patient know that they really had a problem. By the time you reach case presentation, it's way too late. Good morning, Emily. Thanks for stopping by. Answer the question today. What's great about your life right now? So it's during the diagnostic phase where you really get your only chance to communicate severity. All right, myth number 6, never let the patient leave without another appointment. Not a treatment appointment we're talking about here, but another appointment to discuss their case. So if they say I have to think about it, you don't let them out the door. This is really a desperation cycle for doctors. Doctors start to push people away. They run patients off unknowingly with this pushy style of case presentation. And before long, there's no referrals coming in. And that's what I would consider stage 2 of that desperation. Stage 1 of that desperation cycle. Stage 2 is where they lose patients. So they start naturally selling harder due to the lack of patients, which ends up with an empty clinic. And then stage 3 is where they go out and start advertising for new victims to hear their case presentation and end up not doing any better because they're really getting a whole bunch of new patients and not converting any of them, which is not the goal of perfect case acceptance. All right. Oop, wrong one. There we go. So 7th myth is that high price holds hidden power, that people think you're good just because your prices are higher. Not a winning strategy. It really leads to a dead zone where patients don't come in because of your prices, but even they don't know that's the reason why. They don't know consciously that that's what's keeping out of their practice, but that is the one. And myth number 8, and this is a tough one for me, I get a lot of flack for this one, is that patients need to be educated. This complaint typically comes from doctors who have been skipping steps, as I talk about. I've had doctors, one I can think of right now, that was getting 92 new patients a month was his number, but he would only get 40 of them that accept case because he overeducated them. He forced them so much to listen to his speeches that patients would just drift away and say it wasn't worth the time and energy. The essence of case acceptance wisdom is the motto. Tell patients exactly what they need and then cheerfully give them exactly what they want. And if you do that, the need for education is much, much less. It's not to say you can't educate if you feel there's a value there, but it's not going to get you perfect case acceptance. In fact, it's going to push a lot of people away. So write yourself a note that says exactly this. Tell patients exactly what they need and then cheerfully give them exactly what they want. Okay, so most of what we have addressed here, these are mistakes that people make during a case presentation. Remember my assumption, which should be your assumption, that money aside, if money's not an issue, most patients come to us predisposed to say yes to whatever you recommend. We got to deal with the money issue. We got to present that properly and make it easy for them. But setting that aside, patients come to you wanting to listen to you, wanting to do what you tell them to do. So remember to be conscious. Remember not to make any mistakes that we just talked about so far. And then you'll be well on your way to getting perfect case acceptance. And then next week, I don't know what we're talking about in perfect case acceptance next week. However, tomorrow, wrong one. There we go. Tomorrow on Referral Mastery, we're going to talk about delivering hyperconvenience. I always say things are my favorite. But when it comes to referral mastery, delivering hyper convenience is my absolute favorite. Like, you can just see me getting excited. So make sure you stop by tomorrow for hyper convenience. Make sure you join the High Performance Chiro group, and the Chiropractic Business Survival group is in the comments down below, or guide. Make sure you get that and download it.